In her 1961 classic cookbook, Julia Child said, "Pork chops and steaks are best, we think, when they are cut thick, browned on each side, then covered and cooked in a skillet." I agree. Browning is absolutely important for the perfect pork chop. And in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to attempt to teach you how to cook the perfect simple pork chop using only oil, salt, and pepper. So the technique here is going to be key. We're going to do it using 3 steps: prep, cooking, and then, of course, resting. Super, super important. All right, moving on to my first point, which is prep. All right, you got to get yourself a good quality pork chop, obviously, and you're really just going to do 2 things. We're going to cut the connective tissue, and then we're going to let it rest with kosher salt on the outside of it for at least 20 minutes before it goes into the pan. It's very important. Why are we cutting the connective tissue? Well, if you don't sever that connective tissue, it might curl up on you when you're cooking it. And if it curls up, it's not going to get the browning that we are looking for. All right, the salt, also important. Via osmosis, of course, the salt is going to go in and infuse that meat. Why the elevated pan? And this is what I'm using, by the way. This is a sheet pan with just a simple cookie tray on it, all right? So we're going to put it on there. And that air circulation is going to allow the edge of the meat to get a little firm and allow for Maillard reaction, which is a fancy way to say, pardon me, my first pork chop is ready. Using a cast iron skillet here. And we're going to pull that pork chop off. And nice browning there. Now I'm going to rest it. All right. So moving on, the Maillard reaction. Simple, fancy way to say some chemistry that allows a hard crust to form on there and that golden brown that we were just talking about. Now this one isn't quite as brown as I'd like, but see that? That crunch right there, that's the good stuff. And now this guy is resting nicely. All right, so moving on to my second point, we're going to talk about cooking. Just as important as prep, of course. Now for the cooking, I'm using cast iron. Cast iron is great. It allows for a lot of browning to occur. It lasts forever. Get into it if you're wondering about how to do this, okay? Also, oil, salt, and pepper, all right? Now, for the cooking, a little bit of oil. I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of canola oil in there. You need to use a high smoke point oil. Very important. You don't want to use something like extra virgin olive oil. You need something with a high smoke point. Look it up. You can find them, okay? So you're going to let that get in there for a couple minutes and kind of shimmer, and then you're going to take your steak, your pork chop, which has been resting for 20 minutes and has had that kosher salt on it, and we're going to get it in that pan. That's very important. That pan needs to be nice and ripping hot when it goes in there. If you don't hear that, take it away immediately, wait a few more minutes, and apply. So, the other thing about cooking, we're not going to touch it. No poking, no prodding, none of that. Just setting a timer for 2 minutes, and at the end of 2 minutes, we're going to flip it and set the timer for 2 minutes and wait again. And again, all that is oil and salt on there right now, but it's been prepped for 20 minutes with the cuts on there and the salt applied. All right, moving on. Let me talk about dentists real quickly. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was a trichinosis outbreak all over the United States. Anyway, it is a parasitic worm, very bad news, and they did trace it back to commercially farmed food for the most part. Now, food production has come a long way since the 30s and 40s. It's really almost safer than ever, especially compared to back then. So you don't need to cook pork any more than you would cook beef. You can cook it rare, medium, medium well, however you like. Just don't cook it well done. It's super dry. You don't need to do it. It's just as safe. Here's a fact for you. The CDC, between 2011 and 2015, only had 2 reported cases of trichinosis in the United States from the health department. 2, between 2011 and 2015. It's actually a lot more common with wild game like wild boar and wild pig than it is with the commercially farmed food. 2 cases, 2011, 2015. So I'm only doing 2 minutes per side because I'm shooting for a nice medium rare, personally. That's what I like on here. All right, so let's go back and summarize really quickly. The perfect, simple pork chop. Prep, cook, rest. For the prepping, we're cutting that connective tissue a little bit, and then we are putting the kosher salt pretty liberally on all sides and letting it rest at an elevation for 20 minutes before we cook it, all right? For the cooking, going into preferably cast iron with a high smoke point oil, no touching, no prodding, none of that. 2 minutes per side, okay? Resting. One more little thing on the resting. Some people can just put it onto a cutting board. You can certainly do that, but I highly recommend reaching back for a clean sheet pan and cooling rack and putting it on there. Why? because we've got that crust and we don't want to lose it. Alton Brown of Food Network, one of my favorite people. That is my 2-minute timer. And we are flipping. Saying the quote, get the meat elevated and out of the juice so that brown crust we've been working so hard to get won't dissolve. And he's absolutely right. So just to recap, prep, cook, enjoy. Perfect, simple pork chop.